to the season and like real stuff, like guys who aren't signed, DeAndre Hopkins, guys, went through surgeries, Harold Landry. Like we will probably start to get real visuals leading into the summer. I get excited now for that. And even when I played, I was just like, I got a week break. Yeah. Then it's go, 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 go. Yeah. I'm going to rest 3 days before camp start. You know what I'm saying? So it's exciting for me.
Well, and some of the players I have already kind of noticed, being a reporter, you're always doing your job. I've noticed it looks like not every veteran's going to be there today, so don't freak out when we don't bring you like every big name, because a lot of those guys, this is now voluntary again. Minicamp was over last week. This is OTAs wrapping up. So it's going to probably be more so the younger players that are there. My question to you, Ramon, when you have this gap now between this time and the start of training camp, like do you usually as a player go back to like where you're from, or do you take another vacation? Like I'm curious as to how players manage their time, just because you want to stay focused still and stay in shape, but you also want to, I guess, take advantage of your time.
Yeah. Last break is the way I look at it. Like I said, I had about a week. Usually I was trying to plan family vacation last weekend of June, no later than the second week in July, because that's like real crunch time. Conditioning matters. The cuts that you're making as far as running and jumping and getting your body acclimated to what you're going to be doing in camp, adding weight to you if you're one of those type of dudes, sled pulls, like it's that type of hard training I would do. So I would go back to where I was from. I'd come here.
Yep.
Train here, just go crazy for about a week, and then I take a week vacation somewhere.
Okay.
Come right back and get right back to it.
Got it.
Yeah, that's how it goes for most. I was never one of those go out of the country dudes.
Right.
But I know some guys have done that type of stuff. That just seems like way too much travel.
I know, right?
For right before camp anyway.
615-737-1045. Talking a lot of college football this morning with the 2024 SEC schedule being released tonight. It is incredible the way the SEC now, like the NFL, can make an event out of anything. Because it just means more.
They are getting to that point, though. Is it kind of obnoxious, though?
I don't think so.
I don't think
Probably
so.
for people that are not in this conference or covering it.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking that question. If I was Big 12 trying to fight to survive.
I think Big 10, if anything, keeps their eye on the from my opinion, being up there covering Big 10 football, they all look at you and are like, oh, the SEC.
Well, they need to win championships, and they can feel the same way.
You know what
I mean,
they
I'm
would
serious.
say?
Like
they would be like, well, there's only 1 or 2 teams that win. The rest of y'all suck. I've heard that before.
Well,
from Ohio State teammates. It was from Florida. I mean, from Michigan teammates.
I'm wearing the Orange Bowl shirt today, just like the Clemson fans behind me at the Orange Bowl who are going, oh, this isn't Alabama or LSU. We're not worried about you. There's only 2 of you that are good. Yeah, tell me what happened in the rest of that game.
It was a whole lot that went on.
Thanks. Appreciate that. 6 o'clock tonight on SEC Network when 2024 schedules are announced. Peter Burns 3 minutes ago saying each of the SEC teams will play either Texas or Oklahoma once in the upcoming 2024 season. So every SEC team will have either Texas or Oklahoma on their 2024 schedule. Some leaks from 247 sports writers in Austin yesterday saying that Texas will play at Texas A&M.
Oh, wow.
In 2024.
Who you rather see?
Who would I rather see out of those 2?
Yeah.
Give me Oklahoma.
Okay.
I need a little
for
get
a
back.
reason?
That will be the one that Tennessee plays.
I need some get back.
For that exact reason.
Gotcha.
100%. They won't. I don't think they'll put Texas on to Arch as starting.
Correct.
The storyline is way too pure. Way too pure for Arch not to be starting right now.
The teams, Oklahoma will definitely get, I would imagine, South Carolina because of the Shane Beamer connection, because he was at Oklahoma. And actually, Brad Crawford, who's scheduled to join us at 9:20 this morning, reported that this morning, too, and said, I believe South Carolina will likely play Oklahoma because of the Beamer connection there. And I bet Georgia plays Oklahoma because of that Rose Bowl game.
Yeah.
Where they went in overtime in the college football playoff and narrowly beat Baker Mayfield to get to the national championship and then lose to Alabama.
Man, I was talking to a kid this weekend. Speaking of just who you want to play, what you want to do, and what these teams mean coming into the SEC. By the way, the Parks is a great heartbeat, okay, to what we do here on the show. I'm always got a random conversation going on. But this one I was asking the kids, really good athlete. I was like, around the Knoxville area is where he's from. It's like, what are you going to do? You want to go to Tennessee? Something like that. He was like, nah. I was like, okay, what's going on? What you thinking? He was like, I probably, thinking like Texas. He was like, because I want to come play in Knoxville. I was like,
okay.
But that's what those two teams have brought to the SEC now. The recruiting, I want to see how it's going to be spread out and dispersed now, too. Because a lot of these kids that, would probably want to stay or go to Texas or Oklahoma, it was always, well, your family's not going to see you play, especially the Southeastern kids. Now you get an opportunity to actually come home once, maybe every 2 years or something like that, to see the team or be in the city that you grew up in, or teams that you hated and loved that didn't recruit you. Texas and Oklahoma provides that now. And even on other sports, softball. Goodness, can you imagine what Oklahoma is SEC now for softball?
That's crazy. That's going to be nuts.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what recruiting does look like.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It is interesting from the recruiting perspective, just kind of wrapping a bow on this whole discussion. Like, how much does playing a team head-to-head impact your ability to recruit against them head-to-head?
It matters now.
I think we're going to see just how much Texas going to Florida, Oklahoma going to Georgia, Oklahoma going to Alabama. Texas has the home and home with Alabama already. They're going to play again in Tuscaloosa this year. And it's interesting, though, just the way that impacts your ability to go into those homes and say, look, like, you want to play in your home state? Like, you want to leave your home state? Great. Like, come here and, you can come see mom and dad when you play, in Tuscaloosa.
Yep.
And that's the other portion of it where it's going to be fascinating is, and it's also, Caleb, Will, listeners, like the schools that have talented states but not good teams. You know what I'm saying? Like Kentucky basketball. I don't know what the recruiting is. What does it mean for them?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like Missouri, I know is the highest in the Midwest, a hotbed for basketball recruiting. What does that mean for them? Like, and the correlation of how hot Missouri is as a state, and those kids now can go to Oklahoma instead of staying home and playing in the SEC or the Texas. Like, it really is. If you don't have your state on lock as far as your in-state recruits moving forward, you're going to see these kids come back home and dominate you if that's the case. So as many as you possibly can lock up in-state-wise, you should do that, because it's just gotten that much more fascinating with the idea, and coaches going to loud their butts off and say, we can come back here and play. Mama them ain't got to not see you, or the SEC network games that you're going to see and the TV deals and all that. Like, you're going to be seen. Go on coming to Texas.
Isn't that and that's what I feel like Heupel's doing here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because there's some talent
It is.
in Tennessee.
You got to get the state first, and from there you go in everybody else's backyard. And I got to give credit to where it's doing. We asked Brad Crawford about this. South Carolina is locking up almost anything coming out of South Carolina, that is. And you have to now. It's become very territorial.
Well, and South Carolina has the DMV area right closer to them as well than any other team in the SEC.
Yeah.
For the folks that don't know, D.C., Maryland, Virginia.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, that Nicholas Harbor, the 5-star tight end they got, who runs a 10.3 100-meter dash at 220 pounds.
Jeez.
He's a D.C. guy.
Yeah.
Archbishop
DMV,
Carroll, I think. Yeah.
It's tough. That's the reason those coaches get paid that much, Will. And that's why you want to come play in the SEC, too. I'm just really shocked we hadn't got to the point where Clemson and Florida State has come to the SEC.
Well, there's been talks about the Florida State-Miami thing.
Yeah, they got to get paid.
Okay.
They're going to get paid by somebody. I think that's the final wave of conference realignment in the next 6 to 8 years. When all these TV deals start to expire slowly, the next wave is you're going to have those Midwest teams and Northwest and Northeast teams that got left out this time are going to be Big Ten. And everyone else in the South is going to be SEC. I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to be 2 conferences.
I'll take it.
Yeah. 615-737-1045. We'll get back to your phone calls coming up after we talk with John Glennon of the Nashville Post. Biggest thing he's interested in watching today at Titans OTAs. And A report card of sorts for Will Levis through his first phase of an offseason. But we'll ask John the question, when can we really start actually reacting to what Will Levis is doing on the field? When is the time where we're allowed to begin the evaluation process and have general takes instead of instant evaluations? Coming up next with our good friend John Glennon right here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will.
It's Ramon Foster for Zen Sports. And if you did not know, Zen Sports is the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you can earn sports betting rewards. With Zen Sports, your rewards are cash rewards. Yes, you bet real money, and now you are rewarded with it also. Earn a whopping 5% cash back, welcome back bonus for your first 15 days on the site also when you sign up. Keep betting and keep earning every month after that with up to 3% cash back rewards on your betting volume. Best of all, earn cash commission on your referrals bets with Zen Sports Referral Rewards Program. The cash is back with Zen Sports, and that's not the only way Zen Sports make betting better. With an easy-to-use sportsbook and peer-to-peer betting coming summer 2023, yes, this year, Zen Sports is just getting started making betting better. And, of course, we had a big opening last weekend at the Corner Pub. Awesome, great people. I promise you, this is one of the betting sites that you want to be a part of. Zen Sports. Betting just got better. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. And terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years older to bet and in Tennessee.
Wednesday morning at RKW, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, the final day of Titans organized team activities. We'll have all the reaction tomorrow from whatever happens, whoever speaks to us at St. Thomas Sports Park. And joining us right now, John Glennon from the Nashville Post, doing a great job covering the Tennessee Titans and beyond here in Middle Tennessee. What's up, John? How are you?
I'm doing well, and you?
We're good, and we are ready for that dead period of silence from St. Thomas Sports Park. At least I think we're ready, starting really next week. John, I know you wrote about Will Levis and just already his maturation process that's taken place here in the offseason. How do you kind of wrap a bow on his first phase of the offseason and maybe not give him a grade, so to speak, because it's so early, but just how do you assess his comfort level so far?
I think he's come along pretty well. I don't think, it's not like we've been going out there and watching Will Levis making glaring errors or throwing interceptions. I think we've seen evidence of that, that strong arm, that cannon arm, that what, NFL teams have really been attracted to. I think it's been an efficient process for him for the most part, getting guys lined up, making checks at the line, that kind of thing. I'd probably give him, a B overall, and the reason probably not an A. There have been some passes that have not been on target. I think, accuracy, and I'm not saying it's a awful deficiency, but, I think there's still work to be done in terms of accuracy at times. And it's been pretty well documented, too, that though he does have the cannon arm, he's still learning to kind of change pace with that velocity from time to time. And when he does change the pace, when he's throwing in the flat, when he's throwing, maybe over the middle, he's got to be able to be accurate even when he's not at top velocity. So those are kind of some of the things that he's working on. But I think, we've seen some pretty good progress in general from Will Levis.
And, John, when you watch rookie quarterbacks getting used to NFL practices and NFL speed, when does the evaluation process kind of begin for you? Like, when do we take serious takeaways away to say, okay, this is trending in a negative direction or a positive direction? Is that training camp, first preseason game? Kind of when do you start that process?
Yeah, I think like a lot of things for these players, it's been nice, watching the Titans during these OTA sessions. And nice making observations and reports. But let's face it, they're not padded up. These are non-contact practices, so we're not necessarily getting the kind of the full idea of what's going on. It'll be more interesting to me when we hit training camp, when the pads go on, when there's a little bit more contact, when there's a little bit more heat around a guy like a Will Levis in the pocket, and we get a little bit better idea how he responds to pressure. And, I think, too, I always think it's a great idea, and, of course, the Titans are doing that this year, when you practice against different opponents, too, and when you see guys, that are change of pace that you're not used to, that you haven't kind of developed a book on them before in terms of defenders, I think that'll be a telltale sign. And, of course, preseason games, and I think we all know that Will Levis and Malik Willis we'll probably get all sorts of action in those early preseason games. Presumably, at least a possibility that they'll be fighting it out certainly I think Malik Willis will be fighting to stay on the roster, I think, at that point.
That's why I was actually going to go with you, JG. I know Levis is the new shiny toy, but there are reports out that Malik has looked a lot better in command, delivery, and operation of the offense also. Is this a tight race, or is it a little bit of a separation from what you've seen?
Yeah, I do think Malik has looked better. I would agree with you there. In the end, though, I think I'm not so sure it's a competitive race. And I'm not saying that Will Levis has, been better than Malik by leaps and bounds, but I think the ceiling is higher for Will Levis right now. I think he's closer to reaching his potential, even though it's down the line. And I think he is the new man's draft pick as well. Rand Carson's draft pick as opposed to John Robinson's draft pick. So I think that certainly favors him as well. So, I think if things continue as they are right now, I think it's not so much a competition as I think Will Levis is more likely to wind up that number 2. And the question still remains to me, does this team still believe in what Malik Willis can bring at some point? Is he enough of a guy with potential that they want to keep 3 quarterbacks on a 53-man roster? That's going to be a big question. I don't think it's a guarantee by any stretch, despite the rule this year, where you can have an emergency quarterback. Well, you still have to have 3 quarterbacks make the 53-man roster first, and I'm not sure Mike Vrabel will go there unless he really believes there is some untapped potential and something more that he wants to see from Malik Willis.
And when it comes down also to the guys that they're throwing to the wide receivers, as we continue D-Hop watch, right, what has been the response of those guys? Do you see them pushing a little bit more? Is the conversation around, hey, if D-Hop comes, somebody's outside looking in at that point?
I think it's been a pretty solid, off season so far for most of those wide receivers. I think they tend to keep most of that noise on the outside, away from them. We haven't got a chance to talk to them too much since all the D-Hop sweepstakes began, maybe just one day. But, when you talk about those wide receivers, I think to me, Treylon Burks has really been the story for the Titans for this offseason. And again, I put a little asterisk next to that as well. And we talked about it before. These are non-contact practices. Right. The pads aren't on. Let's hold off a little bit. But I still think right now he is the story of the offseason, just because I think he's almost a brand new person, both on the field and off, in terms of everything from health, conditioning, confidence, what he's bringing to the table day after day after day out there, and his consistency. I think that has to be the biggest, thumbs up for the Titans. From what we've seen of them so far in these off-season workouts.
I guess when you look at this offensive line, at least the practices that we've been able to see in OTAs and minicamp, which isn't much because you're not wearing pads. JG, what are still some of the questions for you, just because we haven't been able to see them at full force? But I just think a lot of people are still wondering, there's probably an upgrade on the line, but there's still a lot of newness. Where are they at this point, measuring stick-wise?
I still think there are a lot of questions for me on the offensive line, and those are questions that probably won't get answered until we see them in pads and getting contact and so forth. But, there certainly have to be some still concerns. I think there's more talent in general, but you're looking at a guy, Andre Dillard, who right now appears, again, this is all tentative, right, but appears to be kind of penciled in as a starting left tackle. This is a guy who had 37 offensive snaps last year in Philadelphia. So arguably, your most important position, or certainly one of the most important positions on the field, is a guy who, although he has a high ceiling, is pretty untested, certainly untested recently at that spot. You move over, and if Skoronski plays guard, we don't know whether he'll be guard or tackle, but if he is guard, that's a brand new position for him. He played 0 guards at snaps at guard in college, so that's a learning curve. Aaron Brewer is switching spots. Again, we think he should be able to handle it. He has the physical skill set that he should look good, but it's not for sure, And then you move over to Brunskill. He's new to the team at right guard, so he has to kind of prove himself there. And even Nicholas Petit-Frere, the one returning starter at the same position from last year, I think he was solid during his rookie season, but he's going to need to be better. So, I think he'll need to show us some things too. So that to me is as you say, a position group with a lot of questions attached to it as we move ahead.
I know that everybody likes to pick apart a press conference when there's something big that happens, like Kevin Byard speaking for the first time since he was asked to take a pay cut. And it's easy to, I think, dissect, oh my gosh, does he leave it open-ended a little bit for possibly going somewhere else? JG, what was your just overall thought since we have you here after KB spoke last week in terms of, why he came at the time he came at and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I thought Kevin Byard, as we kind of suspected he would, he is such a class act, such a professional, that he certainly took a very high road during that press conference, when he was sort of asked about, what it was like to him when the team came to him and asked him to take a pay cut. Kind of said he didn't want to get into his feelings at that point, and he also told us that he had, the reason that he wasn't at OTAs was not due to the request for a pay cut, but rather he had been wanting to train solo. But to me, there was a little bit, maybe just maybe I'm a cynical journalist, but a little bit air of, that he really wasn't venting, really wasn't giving us the full Kevin Byard, display of emotions that he might have felt. I still feel like there was a little bit of, frustration, a little disappointment. I mean, when you're Kevin Byard and you're, you've done everything you can for this organization over the years, you've been a tremendous player on the field. You've been everything the organization could ask for off the field. You're coming off another good season, and the team comes to you and asks you for the pay cut. It's not unprecedented. This kind of thing does happen, but still, I think it has to be disappointing, and I wonder, and I asked Kevin Byard this,
sure.
and really he didn't maybe answer it directly, but was there a feeling that they were almost taking Kevin Byard for granted a little bit, like, hey, Kevin
right.
Byard agrees to everything. He's a great guy. He does everything for us. Sure, he'll take a pay cut, and I think, or again, this is just my speculation, but I wonder if Kevin Byard said, hey, enough is enough. I'm doing so much for this team. And this is kind of what I get in return. So, I think he's enough of a professional that he is moving on, and I suspect he wants to be here. This is where he's always been. But it may be one of those deals where I forgive, but I don't necessarily forget for Kevin Byard. So we'll see how that plays out.
John Glennon, our guest here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. John, at this point of the offseason process, what is the one position group you feel the best about? Where are the Titans at their deepest right now on the last day of OTAs?
I think I would probably have to say, the D-line is tough to beat, right now in terms of versatility. It might not be quite as deep as it was last year. We'll see if some guys can come through. But when you can throw Jeffrey Simmons out there, Pierre Tart certainly, has improved year after year. And when you're rotating other guys in there, whether it's, Danico Autry, Arden Key can go in there sometimes as well. And I like some of the moves they've made to kind of bolster their depth a little bit. It's a pretty tough group, and maybe when you kind of expand that, just the D-line to that front seven, and the group that'll be coming after quarterbacks as well, I feel pretty good about that group in general. There are certainly some positions for this Titans team that we're still asking questions about.
Right.
As we mentioned, the offensive line, I think, is one. When you look at cornerback, I think is another where we're asking questions. There's talent there, but boy, some of those guys have been dealing with health issues. You're talking about Fulton, when you're talking about a Molden or Caleb Farley and so forth. Certainly some questions there. Even at safety, we all know how good Byard and Hooker are, but there's a huge drop-off after safety in terms of experience. So plenty of questions, but I got to like D-line, and maybe as I look at running back now, too, we all know Derrick Henry, and I think, Tajay Spears, just from what we've seen a lot of usage of him in the OTAs, and he seems to be doing just about everything right, and I think there's a lot of potential there, so I think that's a pretty good, obviously it's a pretty good spot if you just have Derrick Henry alone, but when you add Tajay Spears to the mix, I like that as well.
And the way too early conversation, I guess, is 2023 the last season we may see Christian Fulton? Like, how do you see this playing out with a guy this young, this talented, that's been called out by management and head coach and still not actively participating in OTAs at such a young age, man? What do we foresee this going? Yeah,
if you're looking in the crystal ball now, I don't think it's a particularly good response
Okay.
that you're reading in the crystal ball for Christian Fulton. As you mentioned, he was kind of one of those guys that was singled out at the end of last year by Mike Vrabel. We know that the other guy who happened to be singled out, David Long, is no longer with the Titans. He was not re-signed there. To me, maybe one of the biggest, if not the biggest number to look at the end of the season at Christian Fulton is simply games played. We know that the talent is there. There were times, certainly in stretches of games where he appeared like he was going to be another shutdown corner for the Titans. So if he's healthy, and able to practice and able to get out there consistently, he's a very good corner. But it's just a matter of being able to get out there on a regular basis, and things have certainly not started well, I don't feel like.
Nope.
Whereas, we'll just compare, we all know what Traylon Burks did this offseason. Basically, it sounds as if he has glued himself to the facility, stayed there as much as he can. He got in condition. He worked out. He's been in great shape. Christian Fulton did not take that approach. He kind of chose to go the solo training approach down in Miami for a long time, and he came back recently, but he hasn't been on the field. Maybe you see him on a bike, as you're walking past, one of the fields there, but that's about as far as it's gone. And I don't think that's a great start, but there's still time for Christian Fulton also. We still got a full training camp. If he can get himself in the kind of condition that he is out there playing the majority of games, it presents a whole new story moving forward.
It's just so fascinating, though, too, that he's got to play well. That's the thing about it. He has to play well in a contract year.
Yeah, absolutely. But, as I say, I think the evidence seems to show, for the most part, that when he's out there and he's healthy, he has locked down some pretty good receivers, for stretches of time. So I think there's still that potential for Christian Fulton, but it's got to be realized not, for a 2 or a 3 game stretch, but for 8 or 10 games at a time, and certainly not being out of the lineup for 3, 4, or 5 weeks, or what we've seen, a lot of times in these first couple seasons.
John Glennon has been our guest here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will at Glennon Sports, where you can find him on Twitter. Always great stuff, John. Thank you.
Okay, good to be on.
Thanks, AG.
Yes, sir. There's John Glennon with us this morning on the show. And I'll ask the former NFL player in the room the same question I asked John there off the top. How much do players really care about what's going on right now without pads on? How much do you guys really react to the positives and negatives of practice? On the other side, and Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Wednesday morning on our own, Kayla and Will, and it's powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. Coming up in hour 4, Brad Crawford from 247 Sports talks SEC scheduling as SEC opponents are released tonight at 6 o'clock on SEC Network. One caveat to that we haven't mentioned yet. We will not get the full schedule. We will only get the opponents that are released tonight, which is how the SEC makes this into a even bigger event. So again, I've never had more of a clearer indication that the SEC is becoming a mini NFL than making a schedule release, like a 2-day thing.
Yeah,
it totally is.
Yeah,
and I honestly, when you're king of the hill, you honestly should. There's nothing better than captivating the moment.
Right, and then you utilize SEC Network for that.
Yep, sure do, man. It's what they're supposed to be doing. Of course, I'm an alumni of the SEC, so alumnus.
Yeah.
You're right, alumni.
That's a pet peeve of mine.
Alumnus of the SEC. So
you can really only do it here right now. I mean, even the Big Ten can't really stretch this type of stuff. And then you're looking at some of these other conferences that are just struggling to figure out if they'll exist. Pac-12, soon to be Pac-10, and they can't even get a TV deal in place. So, let me state this down here for all you SEC people. Like, really be gracious for what you have. I know that sounds silly, but honestly, coming from somebody that was in the Pac-12 when it was actually the Pac-12, the champions.
Yeah.
The Conference of Champions, it sucks now not having that and not even knowing if your conference is going to exist. So just be grateful that you have the SEC and you have, most of all, Greg Sankey running things.
The era, though, Kayla, that I was growing up and getting recruited in, that late 90s, early 2000s, think about all the things that Oregon brought to it. I mean, USC brought to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
USC brought to it. UCLA, it meant something. USC was must-see football. You know what I'm saying? And now for it to be back burner.
Well, they lost USC, so.
So many other states, but so many other steps. But where did they drop the ball?
Well, Larry Scott, their commissioner. That's where Larry Scott. Pardon me, but you know what them.
Yeah.
I mean, he did.
It's TV.
And that's how it is now. So again, Greg Sankey, thankful y'all have him because he is a boss.
It's kind of like what we talked about with the NCAA baseball tournament. When you just accept the fact that sports are now made for television, you become less outraged at things and everything makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And proactive.
Sports are just about selling ads at this point. It's kind of sad, but I mean,
we're here now.
Yep. We mentioned before the break, Ramon, on instant evaluations and OTAs. I feel like the clock kind of starts for rookies by the second preseason game for me. That's when I can tell you, okay, I think this guy is good or I think this guy is bad. We like to make instant evaluations and OTAs because we have more access to video and audio and players, and we just have more access as media grows in the NFL and more digital media outlets bring us videos of guys making one-handed catches or dropping passes in OTAs. Yeah. How much do you guys in the locker room really care about football in June?
Not a whole lot. For the vets, as a young guy, it matters. First 3 years, matters the most, especially if you're not a all-time starter. That's the separator right there. The guys who've been around the block 3 or 4 times, 5 times, they look at OTAs like, man, I'm just getting my bearings. I'm getting my feet getting my feet together and stuff like that. You find small item things to work on.
Right.
And then this is the thing, too. If you have those young studs that we speak of, that make those one-handed catches, get to the quarterback and pull up when they got a sack. The first thing a vet is going to say, man, and it sucks at it this way, but it's so true. Show me in camp and in the games. Mm-hmm. That's what it really boils down to. You know how many times guys look good with just shorts and cleats and helmets, no pads? You don't have that added 8 pounds and all that physicality that's a part of it. Every vet will tell you, show me when the lights turn on. Mm-hmm. That's all that matters. And there's been some dudes that don't do well in practice. Soon as that light turn on and you got that game day jersey, it just clicks. Now, I do think there's a factor in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And some dudes can't show up in those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I would have to say, though, I think it is a little more important to those players that are brand new to the organization that signed free agent contracts like the ones we saw in Sean Murphy Bunting in Al Al-Shaair. I think it's important for some of those guys to probably establish themselves and feel like, okay, we're starting to at least get the feel for this team.
Oh, yeah.
I think for them and for some of these just guys that have signed free agent contracts that are trying to just make the team, I think for them, it's probably a little more important.
It is. And the other portion of that, too, has been welcome into the brotherhood, too, for a guy like, Aziz Al-Shaair and Murphy Button. Like, they just, am I part of this team?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's getting past that hurdle and going into camp is huge. And some guys transition into it well. One guy in particular, that he was a gamer, and I think we just got him towards the latter part of his career, was Mark Barron. It just seemed super quiet, chill. Played ball well, though, but that was his personality from Bama, you know?
It's a Bama.
Yeah.
Yeah, good teammate. I won't make it seem like he's a bad teammate or anything.
615-737-1045, our number as we transition to our fourth and final hour. Brad Crawford's projections on who plays who in the 2024 SEC schedule that is released in terms of opponents every team will play tonight on SEC Network. And a reset of the headlines where the most insufferable team in pro sports is handed a championship. Coming up next on Ramon, Kayla, and Will.
What's going on from the Superbook.com sports desk? I'm Robert Walsh. The NHL Finals wrapped up last night with the Golden Knights blowing out the Panthers 9-3 in the final game. As this is the Knights' first Stanley Cup, they bested their distance from their inaugural season. D-Hop Watch continues as DeAndre Hopkins visits the New England Patriots. We got an update from Diana Rossini about the past relationship between Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins, and it says sources, there is no shared animosity at all. We're going to keep a watch out to see if the Titans can land the 5-time Pro Bowler. And more wide receiver drama in the league as Stephon Diggs is absent from Bill's mandatory minicamp. Head coach Sean McDermott says he is very concerned about it, and Diggs took to Instagram to voice his displeasure. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5. The Zone.
A full studio again and a full squad on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. The wait to get us all back together was almost as long as the wait between Robert's 104.5 and the Zone in our Hour 4 update. With Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh making the show happen. I'm Will Bowling on your Wednesday, June the 14th. Coming up in just about 15 minutes, our good friend Brad Crawford from 247 Sports gives his biggest questions when it comes to the SEC schedule being released for 2024 tonight, as we will learn what the first iteration of a 16-team SEC looks like next fall.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Me too, man.
We mentioned the headline earlier that the most insufferable team in sports has won a championship, and I think it's fair to say I am less inclined to watch the National Hockey League after they just gave Vegas a title after 5 years. Genuinely, I am less interested in the NHL because they gave Vegas a good team just so Vegas would be interested in hockey. It's 100% what happened.
That's all that is.
At least they didn't win it year one.
Yeah.
Because then it really would have been a major issue.
I will say their fans are super lame. I was in Vegas, and we were at Stadium Swim, which is in Old Vegas at Circa, and it was so many people were wearing Knights gear, and when they won, it was just like, oh, okay, all right, let's go. Like nobody was even pumped about it.
That's it?
That was it. They're all free agent fans.
They're in Vegas.
Oh,
what does hockey have to do in Vegas? Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm all about this. I am all about the game growing, 100%. But be a real fan that actually learns the intricacies of the game. Like, it's just a production there.
Yeah. That's tough right there. And when they are a tourist city, like Nashville is too, but Nashville has fans of their teams here.
But they had it before it became a blow-up of a tourist city.
Yeah, and that's
you know
what I'm saying. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just look at also now the Las Vegas Raiders. Like, their fans are actually flying in from Oakland to come support them. Like, it really does show. Will, you mentioned that a second ago. It's a topic that we'll probably do later. Like, how much do these teams and businesses and leagues actually care about the fan? Because I know the NFL probably didn't talk to any airline and be like, hey, we're moving. We got Oakland.
Oh, of course.
They need direct flights. Like, can you guys make that, affordable for them? Guarantee there was no conversation about travel.
Of course not.
So it's fascinating that you say that, Bert, that those people were just jersey holders, not actual fans.
They didn't even have the cool jerseys on, just the T-shirts with cut-off sleeves, which they probably got for free.
Yeah.
Just not very good fans. Not very good fans.
I do not like those jerseys, by the way. I guess it's hating on the Vegas Golden Knights hour, but
It's okay, though. We said that in hour 6. Hey, hate who you hate as a fan base, okay? And if you hate them, Kayla, hey, let it out. I'm here for that.
yeah.
Stop
That's what I'm talking
tiptoeing. You feel me?
I think the white gloves
I hate Baltimore.
on their
There we
white
go.
jerseys are awesome, though. That is one thing.
White, yeah.
They have white gloves with white jerseys, and it's clean.
I'll make you a shirt with that on there, okay? Screw them.
Oh, boy.
I'm just saying in general. We'll put white on gold anytime, Will.
Okay. Well.
Yeah, absolutely.
By the
Like
way, happy birthday to Monty Hooker. Just saw that.
Hey, happy
We always
birthday,
give
Hook.
birthday shout outs here.
There you go. Yeah, no, it's the expansion rules for Vegas gave them a title 5 years in, almost gave them a title 1 year in when they went to the Stanley Cup final as an expansion team and lost to Ovechkin of the Caps. But genuinely, the rules around them getting to pick their team were infinitely better than the ones the Predators had to do over 20 years ago now.
Things have changed.
Massive differences because I think they realized, oh, hey, we can actually grow hockey quickly in these new markets by just giving them second-line wingers on every single one of their lines.
Well, and here's the thing, Will. You just made the point, though. And unfortunately, you don't like it, and I get it, because this team, the Preds, had to do it in a different way. But unfortunately, the game of hockey does not grow at the pace that they need it to grow at. And I think that's the only way, if you're going to get an expansion team, that you're going to be able to continue to grow the game. I'm not saying it's right by any means, but the sport is still needing to get a lot more growth going.
Yeah,
it does.
It really does.
I'm just being from a hockey, family and city and watching the struggle of it continue.
Yeah.
I mean, here in the South, it's gone to the point of growth. It's been incredible with Tampa and Nashville having success, but they have to keep pushing it.
Mm-hmm. They do, and the youth side of it too has gotten a whole lot better.
That's a huge part.
I didn't realize also there's a hockey school here too in Nashville that kids can go to and specialize in hockey and go to school.
The Predators have done an outstanding job growing the sport with younger people in Nashville. And I don't just mean younger fans. They've done a terrific job of that. But the Preds have done an outstanding job like getting hockey sticks in kids' hands when they're 10, when they're 12.
Sure.
Yeah.
And growing the game at the youth level. It's been really cool. I know Andrew Burnett actually said that when he was on 3HL and was asked about, the new Preds head coach, for those unfamiliar, was asked about like how much have you seen it grow in this city? And his answer was like, well, we go to all these, camps and kids are playing, and like we started to see like kids in Predators jerseys. Like the junior Preds going around. Like,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, that's pretty cool. And so certainly no knock on the Preds. They're the ones that actually had to do this thing the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. And you see those ice facilities. We have one out in Bellevue. I mean, they're some of the new ones, beautiful.
Yeah.
And they're actually hosting out-of-town hockey camps and tournaments every single week. It's incredible how much youth kids I see out there that are from out of town even that are coming here to play in tournaments. So, yeah, that's another way to grow the game. But I know it's not fun to see them get it. I'm with you, Will.
Yeah.
For sure.
Screw them. If you say screw them, then the whole group says it will.
And every sport has different rules when it comes to expansion teams. Like MLS, Nashville SC's been able to compete right away because MLS only gives you 5 players to choose from in the expansion draft. So in the NHL, your player pool is the entire league. So you pick your whole team based on the expansion draft, where you take one player from every team. MLS, you only take one player from 5 teams.
Right.
So in MLS, like before people come at me and say like, well, Nashville's an expansion team. Like, don't you want them to win? It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Completely different because Nashville had to work for that too.
I will say,
sign the best player in the league in Hani Mukhtar from Denmark.
and I will say one thing: when you're doing the expansion draft, you better have the right people in terms of who you're picking.
Yeah,
that you gotta kind of hit right.
Yeah, sure. All right, well, it's time for our weekly conversation, or a daily conversation with Greg in Mississippi, I should say. I misspoke. Greg is back with us, Ramon.
Yeah.
What's going on, Greg?
What's up, Greg?
I mean, I don't want to call it a hockey take, but Will, why are you hating on the team that wants the championship? I mean, that's what you want. I think your team there in Nashville is poised to be the first team to deliver Nashville sports championship. Well, I guess you could say your SC, your soccer. You know that a little bit better. Well, you actually do a decent job on that broadcast, and I actually listened to a little bit of you. Let your analysts talk a little bit more, and then you'll be the next Jim Nantz. But anyway, I was really calling about the SEC and this schedule. And I get it, Mr. Foster. I get you and Mr. Slay. Y'all are competitors, great competitors. You want to play the Floridas and the Georgias. My friend Will there, and then we'll bring Kayla. And let's start with Vandy, though, Kayla. I saw a deal where Vandy would play Missouri, Tennessee, and South Carolina every year. I think if you're a Vandy fan, you take that. If you can beat Tennessee once every 4 years and they're competitive in the game, you would take that. You probably could get 6 wins. He could continue to build that program up. They played hard. I think they actually might be a bowl team this year. My friend Will looks at this as opportunity for them to get in the playoff, Tennessee. This is why. Because, Will, you would have to admit, Florida and Georgia. Georgia's on top of the mountain now.
Of course.
And Florida's pretty much dominated you, I guess, the last 10 years. I don't know. It's maybe
Florida?
longer than that.
Tennessee beat Florida last year. Correct.
Well, all right, but Florida beat you how many before that, Will, with terrible coaches?
I think 3 years, maybe? Yeah.
Well, you can look it up, but I think Florida's got the best of you. You can. I'll give you permission to do it.
Okay,
but
thank you, Greg.
Right now, if you don't play them every year, your path is easier. Maybe you're thinking that Coach Saban's going to retire in the next couple of years.
I'm not.
You finally did beat Alabama, because Alabama did beat you a lot in a row, right, Will? I don't know, but it seemed like every year I looked up they did.
It sounds like you already know the answer. You don't need to ask me.
Okay. I know, but I like listening to you, Will, because you prepare for that show. But if you're not playing, if you're only playing one of the big boys every year, I think you take your chances with who's in the West. And if you're Tennessee at a 10-2 with this expanded playoff, you're going to be in the playoff. You don't have to win the SEC championship. You want to get to the playoff where you can win the big money. But I do want to close with a take for you. And, you know, we want to knock the other conferences. I'm going to take up for the Big Ten. The Big Ten has kind of lapped the SEC on this scheduling.
Have they?
Will, I know it's Kelly. Y'all seen that flex schedule model. I think it's a great deal when they brought in USC and UCLA. And you watch the SEC copy something like that, you protect 10 or 11 rivalries, and then you get everything in there and spin it in there. Watch the people that own Live. I bet you they try to buy ESPN in the next 3 to 4 years. And if you control ESPN, you control the.
Oh,
there goes Greg.
Did we do that? Greg,
I want to ask Greg who won with Southern Miss.
We've got to get to Brad Crawford coming up next because we've got a hard out with Brad at 9:30.
Greg
So we gotta
is
get to Greg.
hilarious. I'm just going to bring that to the
Greg
table.
is hilarious. You hear me?
You didn't hear him
Don't
last
feed the fire.
Last week. He complimented you, Will.
Oh, I know.
He
He
complimented
did.
Will.
He said you did a decent job on the broadcast too. Decent.
If we didn't like
2
Greg,
compliments in a row.
if we didn't like Greg, we wouldn't take his calls.
Greg, I wanted to ask him who won between Tennessee and Southern Miss. Dang, I missed
Brad
my
Crawford up
opportunity.
next. It's Ramon Kalen Will, 104.5 The Zone. Wednesday morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will, and it's powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors here on 104.5 The Zone with Robert Walsh making the show happen. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, I'm Will Bowling. As we go back to the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline, checking in with our good friend Brad Crawford of 247 Sports. What's up, Brad? How are you?
How y'all doing this morning? I'm looking forward to seeing the SEC schedule released tonight. Here that we are about a year out from Oklahoma and Texas officially being SEC members.
Yeah. And we were going to kind of start with that, Brad, because it's crazy how the SEC has almost become a mini NFL when it comes to making events out of nothing. Like, just the fact that we have basically filled an entire show this morning on just the opponents coming out tonight. I mean, when did this shift kind of happen, in your opinion, where the SEC just kind of began to have the same pull similar to what the NFL has on us?
Yeah, I think 5 to 6 years ago when the Big Ten started encroaching on the SEC's revenue and sort of those two teams, really the last 4 or 5 seasons, y'all, has just lapped the competition in terms of overall revenue, averaging like $750 million a year now, both those leagues. So I think college football is dominated right now by the SEC and Big Ten, and we saw the Big Ten last week get ahead of the SEC announcing its 2024 and 2025 schedule. And now here the SEC gets its own primetime billing as well.
So, Brad, starting from the Tennessee perspective, the conversation about teams' third opponents in a 9-game schedule certainly still applies when it's an 8-game schedule because we understand it's Alabama and Vanderbilt who are expected for the Vols. Then you got a lot of rivals to choose from with Florida and that rivalry that started with Steve Spurrier in the 90s. Auburn, if you go back to the 70s. Of course, Kentucky, Tennessee's played them over 100 times. Where do you think among those teams and others, what is the priority, in your opinion, for the Vols when it comes to those next teams that the SEC will want them to play?
Yeah, I think you're going to see Kentucky, Vanderbilt, and Alabama at least be Tennessee's 3 scheduled games here on out. You know, there was some murmurs recently that the SEC could be wavering on that Bama-Tennessee game, but I do think that that'll be a protected game when it's all said and done. Tennessee at Ole Miss could happen next year. Vols haven't played in Oxford since 2014. And, of course, the league office wants that, you know, Kiffin versus former school matchup, and that's going to attract some eyes. I think what's most interesting for the Vols is, you know, do they draw Texas or Oklahoma next season? Whichever team they don't draw, they'll play in 2025. But I think Oklahoma is going to be the team that, as far as, you know, TV viewing pleasure, Vols Sooners will be a appetizing matchup next fall.
Will there be a coach or team that feels like they got hosed because of their permanent 3? And why is his name Nick Saban?
Of course they will, man. But this popular narrative about, you know, Nick Saban's running away from Tennessee and LSU based on his comments a few months ago, that's not true. I mean, Saban's beaten Tennessee 14 and 15 years. And, you know, no offense to Vols listeners, but Bama did have, 16 penalties in last year's game. And that was a classic game, one of the best SEC games of the last 10 years. So I think Tennessee-Bama is going to happen. I think LSU-Bama is going to happen. But, yeah, if I'm Nick Saban, I've proved over an 8-game SEC slate that, you know, I don't need to schedule a 9th conference game. It just makes the schedule even more difficult.
Is there anything in this scheduling process that goes against what the SEC is trying to do? Meaning, yes, a harder schedule. Like, do you find the SEC, you know, in the back end of this, canceling itself out?
You know, I don't think, Ramon, that the SEC needs to move to a 9-game schedule. You know, you're going to hear Big Ten media and those from the Athletics say, you know, the SEC has to move to 9 or shouldn't be included in the expanded playoff. I mean, for 20 years, the SEC has basically, you know, played its 8-game schedule, played 2 cream puffs a year, scheduled another, you know, Power 5, and been fine. Yeah. I mean, the SEC's won like 9 of the last 11 national championships. I think have won 5 in a row. The SEC doesn't need to add another game. And you look at Bama specifically, I mean, the Crimson Tide have games scheduled against Wisconsin, Ohio State, Florida State, all in the next 6 or 7 seasons. So SEC teams, for the most part, the elite programs have scheduled difficulty. And with the expanded playoff, I mean, the SEC could play 6 games a year, and half that league's still going to be in the mix.
Gotcha.
Brad, is there still talk of the SEC expanding even more? We've heard some stuff on Florida State, Miami, or one of those possibly.
Yeah, I think Greg Sankey's made it pretty clear recently, at least on the record, that the SEC feels pretty good at 16 with Texas and OU. But, if you see the Big Ten add maybe a Notre Dame or North Carolina or the ACC begin to deteriorate, I certainly think that, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, as you mentioned, would be targets for the SEC. I've actually heard NC State would be maybe a program down the road that the SEC could go after as well.
So I like this list here of important hires, the most important here in college football for this 2023 season. I think that's actually really, really cool that you guys have that up there. If you're going to just keep it in the SEC, Brad, like who is the most important hire in the SEC?
I think Tommy Rees at Alabama is very important. I mean, he has to pick the right quarterback, or Bama's not going to get to the playoff this season. And I thought coming out of spring practice that Jalen Milroe was going to be the guy, and then Nick Saban presses the panic button and goes after essentially Notre Dame's backup quarterback, at the urging of his new OC, Tommy Rees. And Tommy Rees is a guy that didn't like Tyler Buchner all that much last season in South Bend. So that was kind of a head-scratching move to me, but I do think Alabama has talent at receiver, very good backfield with a couple of freshmen who are probably going to get some early carries. So I think Bama's going to be okay, but, a lot of pressure on Tommy Rees to look good in year one in Tuscaloosa.
So, Brad, along those lines, whose quarterback situation are you more confident in at this point of the offseason, Alabama's or Georgia's?
I think Georgia. Based on what I've got a few high school coaching buddies in the state of Georgia that, have watched a lot of practices this spring, some good intel there. And all three of them guys have told me that Carson Beck has just looked great at the quarterback position, and they got a couple of 5-stars behind him too. Kirby has not named the starter yet, but I'm sure it's going to be Carson Beck. He's a guy I think right now whose Heisman odds are around plus 2,000. I would probably take a flyer on him getting to New York because, Georgia's going to have weapons around him, and everything I've been told is, he was throwing 10, 15-yard darts against Georgia's first-team defense, which, let's face it, that's probably the best defense he's going to play all year, and he gets to play them every day in practice.
And just looking at the way it's set up right now, too, who's your go-to teams this year? Is it Georgia and nobody else, or do you see the talent that A&M actually recruited a year ago showing up? Because I'm very fascinated to what Jimbo's capable of doing at Texas A&M, and also with Petrino. I don't know who's calling plays. Maybe it's him, maybe it's Jimbo still.
Yeah, that's the big thing, Ramon. Texas A&M's defensive front, the front seven really is going to be one of the SEC's best, if not one of the best in college football. A lot of 5-stars there. Walter Nolan at D-tackle is one of the best players in the country. He's going to show out. But, the million-dollar question is, can Jimbo Fisher relinquish his role as basically play caller and give it all to Bobby Petrino? He brought him in for that reason, and I think A&M is going to wind up paying Fisher's buyout if it doesn't work this season. This is a roster that, 2 years ago, they signed the top recruiting class ever, according to our insiders. And, long story short, they paid a lot of money for those 30-so players. And Texas A&M needs to show up and, be a top 10 program as a result. But getting back to your question, I think LSU might be the best team to kind of, come out from outside of that top 5 and get to the playoff this season. Jaden Daniels is back. Garrett Nussmeier is probably the best backup quarterback in college football, so they are set at the most important position on the field. And they've got my favorite player, Harold Perkins. He's another Will Anderson-type clone.
Now, Brad, you can't go out saying that about A&M, man. You heard Jimbo a couple of years ago.
A lot of Bucky's money.
They pay for what? They don't pay for anything out there, man.
Hey, any school that can get away with NIL pay is doing. I mean, it's a no holds barred, man. And A&M's not the only school in the SEC that is strengthening its NIL arm, I will say.
No doubt.
Absolutely. Brad Crawford, great to catch up with you, man. And we certainly look forward to seeing everybody in Nashville for SEC Media Days in a month. We got to see if we can kind of petition the good folks of the SEC to just maybe it's SEC Media Nights. I know Peter Burns at SEC Network has been pushing for this. We'll certainly catch up with you here in person, man, next month.
Yeah, see y'all soon.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. Absolutely. There's Brad Crawford with us here on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. That is the good fight that that I know friend of 3HL, Peter Burns, has been fighting is to move SEC Media
Nights.
Days and make them SEC Media Nights.
It's pretty
Can you
good.
imagine the light show that would be?
Well, I mean, can you imagine having a couple cocktails and
Oh,
then doing
my
things? I mean, I
God.
don't know about that one.
It's basically a recruiting weekend for adults and
Right.
media, right?
Yeah.
Can you,
Like Nick Saban after a couple beers, like, okay, let's see what we can get out of him now.
like legitimately, you know how they do the big letters for recruits and stuff like Rocky Top or Bama or all that type of stuff? I almost said the RT words. What?
Yeah, don't you ever do that.
Oh,
Man, who would be the coolest coach to hang out with after a
Coolest?
couple
Yeah,
brewskis?
the most fun coach on Broadway.
I got
615-737-1045.
I'm actually putting my bid in for Shane Beamer.
I was going to say that, actually.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Shane's young enough. He's
Yeah.
been on these streets before.
I agree.
Lane, I think, got to stay too clean.
Lane
Yeah.
10 years ago would be the runaway
Yes,
answer.
he's different now, I've heard.
Lane is domesticated
Yep.
now.
Guess what I ran into this weekend also, man? This kid's playing ball too. Matt Luke.
Yeah.
From
Yep.
he's at Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. His kid's
Offensive
playing
line
travel.
coach.
Yeah.
That's right.
I told him, I was like, hey, Coach Luke, we still got a relationship, right? He was like, yeah. It's like, stop recruiting all the best players. He looked just like, I'll
Sorry.
never stop.
Sorry, Moan.
I'm going to do it even more now,
Right?
Ramon. Yeah, it was good seeing him, though, man. His kids travel ball, too. Every football guy I know, kid is in baseball.
Why not?
Crazy.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
We haven't said two buzzwords on social media in football this week. Should we go there with Baby Gronk?
Oh, God.
Speaking
I
of,
heard he's on everybody's DMs.
speaking
like,
of kids,
keep it easy, bro.
let me just say this.
Jeez.
My good friend Davey Shepard, Speedway Soccer Podcast, cover Nashville SC, good friend of the show, tweeted this the other day that if you tweet Baby Gronk onto my Twitter timeline, I'm just going to mute you. It's not my choice, it's yours. Like, you're making the choice to make me mute you if you put Baby Gronk. For those of you who are unfamiliar right now, there is a dad who is training his kid, and he's become a social media sensation, and he's like being quote unquote recruited by other teams, whatever it is. All that to say, it actually makes sense to train your kid when they're 8, 9, or 10 to play baseball because that's a skill-based sport.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how
Yeah.
good you are at catching footballs. If you're my size and a big gust of wind knocks you over when you're in high school, you're not going to be good at football.
Right.
Have you seen the behind the scenes?
Oh,
with
yeah, I
him,
know.
with the dad?
It's just sad.
Coaching
is-
his kid, I'm sorry.
Like,
that is so ick.
If you're not athletic, like, you're just not going to be good at football.
You can't force this. I don't care if it's
Like-
golf,
It's not a well.
swimming.
Okay, well that I'm going to push back just a little bit.
You can teach it better in golf.
If you're gonna
Golf?
learn how to play a sport as a kid, like baseball, golf, like
Yeah.
skill-based sports that are more skill versus athleticism, is what you would actually want to do. That being said, there is no reason ever to train your kid like a professional athlete at 10. Let kids be
None.
kids.
None.
Let kids have a childhood and be kids and have fun with each other.
If y'all hadn't seen the behind the scenes of his dad coaching him
kinda
up,
disgusting.
it's sickening.
I know. Again,
You hear me?
he's getting people's DMs like, get out.
And from my understanding, this kid's tour isn't going good for the kid.
Well, that's not fair to him.
It's mean kids out here. And the dad could care less about it. It's about, and I'll say all this with allegedly, okay? Allegedly is not going good for the kid. Allegedly, the dad is coaching the kid up on all these things, and allegedly, the dad is having a good time behind his
I
kid's
don't like
stardom.
that.
It's not okay.
That's fair.
You parent your kids how you want to, though, right?
Sure.
It's just sad if y'all go down a rabbit hole.
So Brad Crawford brings up an interesting point that we don't hear a lot, saying that the SEC doesn't have to go to 9 games and that they're doing just fine playing 8. Here's where I agree with him. I think when it comes to making the college football playoff and winning national championships, he's 100% correct. I think the incentive of playing 9 games is so teams that have 3 rivals can play all 3 of their rivals. And that if you have Texas in the SEC, you can't have them not playing A&M every year. They just have to.
They have to.
It's one of the biggest rivalries in college football. But I think the point is valid that playing an 8-game SEC schedule is enough to test yourself and make the playoff, to the point where I think the point from Big Ten people and people outside the SEC is that, oh, well, we're playing more FBS opponents. Like, oh,
Yeah.
the question was like, well, ACC teams, they're playing 2 FBS teams much more than SEC teams are.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Like, so let me give you an analogy. Based on a 3-week schedule, would you rather play Georgia, Louisiana Monroe, and UAB, or play like Purdue, Illinois, and Wake Forest?
Give me the first schedule. I'm going to be honest with you.
Give me the first one. Like, the first one is still harder.
It's still harder.
Because in today's college football, I don't care if you have 3 wins against middle-of-the-road teams. 1 loss, even to a great team, still kills you.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
That's what matters in college football right now.
Yeah, that's it. And I look at it also, Will, and that's one thing that got me with the 3 permanents that Tennessee could potentially have. Like, it's the quality of wins. It's the way they're going to view it somewhat, right? But if you smack those other 2 teams the way you're supposed to, then it handles itself. And what happens if those teams, Vandy and Kentucky, go beat Auburn, go beat Ole Miss when they're good? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of things that go on in between this. And, of course, the shift of powers. We don't know what this is going to look like when these teams get together in the new SEC, right? It really could be a shift in South Carolina, a shift in Florida getting back, Arkansas being in that conversation, because you got to look at it. Sam Pittman is no slouch when it comes to recruiting and having his team prepared to play. Right. And they have a really good quarterback coming back this year, and they have boys up front that can get the job done. You just never know. Missouri's in the same conversation. Missouri can now tap into Oklahoma, can now tap into Texas, and compete well against the SEC, or I said against like they hadn't been in it, in the SEC too. So these permanents can switch no matter what, the way I look at it, Kayla. Like, it's bothersome that we got to go through this because those rivalries do mean a lot. But you never know what Florida's going to look like 2 years from now if Napier gets it together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I agree.
Or what Georgia. How long can it last? Saban's said it lasts as long as he wants to, right?
Yeah.
But how long can it last? And it also boils down to what your quarterback situation is looking like year in and year out. That's the other portion of the SEC that's going to be fascinating to me. Who's the 5 stars that are going to continue your win streaks? Like, we don't know actually what Nico's going to be able to do yet.
Right.
That's so much that's laying on the fact that he's supposed to be the savior. And the same thing goes for Georgia's new quarterback, Raiola. Like, the same conversation can be had. Georgia got 2 or 3 5 stars on their roster right now. Neither one of those guys are probably slated to be the starter.
Well, and then how long do they stick around before they jump in?
And then go to another SEC school.
Yep.
Speaking of that, another report from Brad Crawford, actually 30 seconds ago, adding that Georgia will reportedly play at Alabama and at Texas in 2024.
Oh, wow. Woo,
if they take L's, what does that mean for Georgia?
Probably nothing.
Then they take, right. Well, here's the thing, though.
In a 12
That's the thing, though.
playoff.
Look at their schedule this year.
Come on, Kayla.
Do easy.
Come on.
And then, so, hey, you know what? Bring it, 2024.
I just like the fact that they are kind of mixing it up a little bit. Like,
with the Texas,
Well, like, I think I only played Ole Miss once.
Oh, with
Tennessee hadn't played in Baton Rouge since the Derek Dooley 14 men on the field game until last year.
See what I'm saying?
That should never happen.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the shuffling, the domino shuffling.
Absolutely.
Tennessee's gone to A&M once since they joined the SEC, and A&M has been to Tennessee once, and that was just because it was a bonus game thrown in on the 2020 schedule. Otherwise, they would be going there for the first time this year.
We'll have to ask Heupel at some point when he has the ability to come on. What does that do for your planning and scheming moving
I was
forward?
actually just gonna bring that up.
Because when you got the East, you know what you're going. You know the rosters. Mm-hmm. You better be a dog.
Do you start planning now?
Yeah.
Well, you'll end up being more familiar with everyone. Eventually. You're not yet.
Right. Mm-hmm. You're gonna have to be though.
But you know, you feel what I'm saying though, as far as saying I know what I have to face in Georgia each year. Mm-hmm. So I need to recruit for that player.
Well, and on the flip side, we've talked about it a lot going into year 3 of Josh Heupel. How much does he have to change his offense because everyone else has seen it a time or two now?
With this new method, may not be as often as you think. You know what I'm saying? Like the 6 that you were playing on the east side of it or the 5 you was playing on the east side of it, like you can switch up and reinvent yourself now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to go to some new stadiums.
For the fans, I think that's the biggest thing too.
Yeah.
It's beneficial for them to be able to kind of check that list off. Oh yeah, let's go see this environment. That's cool. I think that's fun.
I do too.
I was getting closer to checking off every SEC stadium, and now there's 2 more.
Right? You got to keep
My
going.
quest will take that much longer.
There might be 2 more in 3 years.
Could be.
Coming up next, final call for phone calls.
Last call.
615-737-1045 on closing time of RKW. We'll get to Paul and Franklin first up when we come back as we wrap up the show here on Ramon, Kale, and Will. One final segment this morning of RKW, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. The Buck Rising Show takes over after us. You can hear the dumbest thing in sports this week there at 11 o'clock. Titans meeting with the media at 12:20. That is when the Buck Rising Show will go live to the podium here coming up after us. Of course, stick around with the Zone all day.
Yeah, I hope Buck's show gets flooded with Baby Gronk, dumbest thing in sports things. Because he's like, do not mention it on my show.
Oh,
Buck said that?
What was that,
Well,
Ramon?
Do not mention that on my show.
Baby Gronk to the shadows.
I appreciate Bert. I appreciate that
Right.
there.
That's decent.
He only does that, though, when he wants people to do those things.
yeah, of
course.
He's like, you guys better not make fun of my new
Right.
bike. It's like, did I mention I have a new bike?
Your bike sucks, Buck.
I like the deep voice, Caleb. But yeah, I heard him talking about it yesterday. I was snooping in on you guys yesterday, man.
How are you?
Wasn't a whole lot of slander, man. I appreciate that from y'all. Wasn't a whole lot
What do you
of
mean a whole
slander.
lot of
Wait, from
slander?
us?
Loafing.
Why the heck would we slander?
Well,
You're our
always-
teammate.
I know, but we mock anybody that takes a day off around here.
Well, that ain't happening anymore because we all deserve it.
okay, that's
There
fair.
we go.
See, that's
No, I'm telling you, whenever I'm in here, if y'all take a day, I'm gonna talk trash. I don't care if I just took a long vacation. I am
Yeah,
talking
guys,
trash about every one of y'all.
We should talk more trash about Bert.
Well, we only
should.
slander them, Kayla, when we can benefit from seeing their reaction in person.
very true.
We only take shots when you're turned to our face. Not
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Not your
So I
back
should
turned to
hold
us.
all my affronts until you get back.
Yeah,
and
of
then
course.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I
For
can do
real.
That. I
That way,
can do
we make the other people mad, and then it's better radio.
see, makes sense right there. I'm here for that.
We're throwing stuff in here, it just gets wild.
I mean, it is a wild style in here.
Back to the phones. Paul in Franklin gets the last word this morning here on RKW. What's up, Paul?
Come on, Paul.
Good morning, everybody. How's the greatest sports call-in show in America doing this morning?
We're
We're
fantastic.
good.
All right. It's great to be alive in Tennessee and be in Tennessee, and as the great Peyton Manning used to say, Omaha, Omaha. All right. Let me tell you something. I got one issue to get to. What was the caller from Mississippi named Greg? Is that
Greg.
his name?
Yeah, get him.
All right. Well, I got to come after old Greg down in old Mississippi. Let me tell you something right now. Seemed like he got a little axe to grind against old Tennessee a little bit. Seemed like. Well, that's okay, Greg, because a lot of schools, a whole lot bigger than Mississippi's, got axes to grind against Tennessee. And let me tell you one thing, Greg, about them little streets that you say that they've dominated us here and there and there. Greg, it seems like you might know a little bit about history, but you don't know about the history of those streaks. Those streaks come to an end, and Tennessee starts streaks. So I need you to research that, Greg. You told Will to look it up. You need to look that up, Greg. Go look it up, Greg.
Tell him, Paul.
And educate yourself. The final thing is this right here. Jealousy, Greg, is a bad thing. That's a bad sin. It's in the Bible, Greg.
Hallelujah.
Jealousy is bad. I know you jealous of Tennessee. Look, I don't know. Mississippi, I'm sure, has morning call-in shows down in Mississippi. I don't call down there, Greg. I don't call air shows. I don't know what y'all good at. I don't know, squirrel hunting or something. I don't know what y'all good at. We're good at everything up here, Greg, in sports. And the final comment is this. Yes, Greg, when that 12 playoff comes in, Tennessee is going to get one of them national championships. And, Greg, you'll still be good at squirrel hunting or something. God bless y'all. Go Bighorns.
Fantastic.
Paul versus Greg in the
Paul and Franklin, ladies and gentlemen.
ring.
WL.
Man said, I'll cut a promo right now.
I swear, boy, I'm here for Paul at all times.
That's the
great.
energy you cannot take into your Wednesday.
And sometimes you just lay back and let Paul do his thing, man.
Well, from that motivation to midweek motivation, courtesy of Inky Johnson, from one VFL to another, we close out the show the way we always do on Wednesday mornings with our guy Inky, taking you home here on this Wednesday morning.
The first one reads, "This is the beginning of a new day. You have been given this day to use as you will. You can waste it or use it for good. What you do today is important because you are exchanging a day of your life for it. When tomorrow comes, this day will be gone forever. In its place is something that you have left behind. Let it be something good." The second one reads, "Challenges. Challenges come so we can grow and be prepared for things that we're not equipped to handle in the moment. When we face our challenges with faith, prepared to learn, willing to make changes, and if necessary to let go, we're demanding that our power be turned on. And the last one reads, everyone you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Be kind.